Silence is not weakness, it's strategy. You don't owe anyone the blueprint to your future, and the more you speak, the more you give others permission to interfere, judge, or sabotage what they don't understand. The most dangerous thing you can do in a noisy world is to announce your every move. Because when you tell people your plans, you invite opinions, distractions, and resistance that were never meant for you. Some things grow best in the dark. Your vision is one of them. Energy grows where attention goes, and every time you spend your energy explaining, over-talking, or trying to convince others of what you're doing, you're scattering the very power you need to make it happen. Talking feels productive. It gives you that temporary high, that sense of being in motion, but in reality, it's just noise, unless it's backed by relentless execution. Words without action are like smoke without fire. They look like something's burning, but there's no real heat. When you talk too much about what you're going to do, your brain begins to confuse intention with completion. You feel accomplished just for saying it out loud, but nothing has moved in the real world. That's why so many people speak big and deliver small. Because they've spent all their energy impressing others instead of investing in the grind. Every word you speak costs you mental fuel, and when that fuel is poured into conversation rather than creation, you slow your own progress. Silence, on the other hand, is powerful. It centers your focus. It concentrates your energy like a laser instead of diffusing it like a flashlight. When you stop explaining yourself, stop updating everyone, stop leaking your plans to people who haven't earned access to them, you reclaim your mental bandwidth. You get sharper. You move with intention. And most importantly, you preserve your inner fire. Because true power doesn't announce itself, it reveals itself in results. Execution is a full-time job, and it doesn't have room for distractions disguised as dialogue. You want to get ahead? Then direct your attention like a weapon. Put it on your craft, your discipline, your next step. Let your results be loud and your process be private. Because when you protect your energy and give it only to what matters, momentum builds, clarity sharpens, and results begin to speak a language far louder than words ever could. Most people don't get it, and they don't need to. Your vision wasn't handed out at a conference for group approval. It was whispered to you in silence, planted deep in your spirit when no one else was looking. The mistake too many people make is assuming that understanding must come before execution, as if the world's comprehension is a prerequisite for your progress. But the truth is, the more you share your plans with minds that haven't been trained to think like yours, the more you invite confusion, judgment, and subtle resistance, not because people are evil, but because most people are wired to fear what they don't understand and to question what they can't control. Your ambition may unintentionally expose their complacency. Your courage may confront their comfort, and without even meaning to, they may project their limitations onto your limitless idea. They'll tell you to slow down, be realistic, or take a safer path. Not because they're guiding you, but because they're guarding themselves. And if you're not careful, you'll start adjusting your dream to fit their level of belief, which is a tragic trait. Your potential in exchange for their comfort. You weren't born to explain your every step to people who only know how to walk in circles. You were born to break patterns, not to be understood by them. So let them doubt. Let them talk. Let them misinterpret your silence as arrogance or your focus as distance. That's not your burden to carry. You don't owe anyone an explanation for how you move, why you grind, or where you're headed. The ones meant to walk with you will see it without needing a map. The rest are simply spectators to your journey. Share less, protect more, move quietly. Trust that what's clear to you doesn't have to make sense to the world. Because when the results arrive, the same people who didn't understand your plan will suddenly respect your outcome. And by then, your work will speak louder than their doubts ever did. Every listener isn't a well-wisher. And one of the hardest truths you'll ever have to swallow is that not everyone who hears your dreams claps for them with a pure heart. Some people will smile in your face, nod in agreement, even offer encouragement, but deep down, they are quietly hoping you fall short. Not because of anything you've done to them, but because your ambition reminds them of everything they are not doing with their own lives. Your courage to reach for something higher becomes a mirror to their fear, and instead of rising with you, they'd rather see you sink to make themselves feel more comfortable. That's why silence isn't just discipline, it's defense. The fewer people who know your plans, the fewer opportunities you give for hidden sabotage, whispered doubts, and silent envy to enter your atmosphere. Because sabotage doesn't always come in the form of direct attack. Sometimes it's a subtle suggestion that you're aiming too high, a passive-aggressive comment meant to seed self-doubt, or a convenient friend who always seems to appear when your momentum is building, only to distract you from your path. Not every critic is loud, and not every threat wears a mask of hostility. Some of the most dangerous feedback comes wrapped in false support. When you talk too much, you open doors that were better left closed. You give people access to your process before your foundation is even built. And not everyone deserves that access, especially those who haven't earned your trust or shared your sacrifices. Keep your path clean. Protect it with silence. Let people wonder what you're up to, because curiosity is far less dangerous than envy fueled by clarity. Move in quiet confidence, knowing that the fewer people who know, the fewer people who can interfere. When it's time for your results to speak, they'll speak loud enough for everyone to hear. Until then, preserve your vision from premature exposure, because not all applause is honest, and not all listeners are rooting for your rise. Premature exposure invites premature criticism, and the cost of speaking too soon is often heavier than we realize. When an idea is still forming, raw, unshaped, and tender, it doesn't need an audience. It needs nurturing. But too many people fall into the trap of sharing their plans before those plans have roots, hoping for encouragement, but opening themselves up to judgment instead. And here's the truth. When you reveal your vision too early, you don't just invite support. You invite scrutiny, unsolicited advice, confusion, and even mockery. People begin poking holes in something that hasn't even taken full shape, and before you know it, doubt creeps in, not because your idea lacks potential, but because someone else's limited perspective begins to shrink your belief. You start second-guessing. You hesitate. You edit your original fire to fit the mold of their comfort. That's how momentum dies. Not because the idea wasn't good, but because it wasn't protected long enough to mature in silence. Every creative process, every dream, every bold ambition goes through a vulnerable phase where it needs privacy, solitude, and internal alignment, not exposure to external opinions that haven't earned the right to shape it. It's not that all feedback is dangerous, but feedback given too early is often rooted in misunderstanding. People respond to what they see, and if they can't see your full vision yet, they'll fill in the gaps with fear, doubt, or practicality disguised as concern. That's why the most powerful builders and creators move quietly at first. Because they understand the difference between building something real and just talking about it. Silence isn't secrecy for secrecy's sake. It's a sacred strategy to shield your dream while it develops muscle, clarity, and direction. When the time is right and your plan is solid, let it be known. But until then, protect your process from noise. Not because you're afraid of criticism, but because your vision deserves the right to breathe and grow without being dissected before it's even born. Talking builds pressure. Doing builds results. And the difference between the two is the line that separates the dreamers who stay dreaming from the doers who deliver. There's a dangerous high that comes from announcing your goals. It feeds the ego, gives you a hit of significance, makes you feel like you've already won something just for saying the words out loud. But here's the catch. That announcement creates pressure without progress. You start performing for the applause instead of grinding for the outcome. You become addicted to the reaction rather than committed to the result. The more you talk, the more you raise expectations, not just in the eyes of others, but in your own mind. And with that pressure comes the fear of falling short. The weight of living up to words that were spoken before any real foundation was built. Suddenly, the focus shifts from executing in silence to maintaining an image. That's not purpose, that's performance. But when you move in silence and stay grounded in action, you strip away the need for validation and build something solid, step by step. No one is watching, no one is judging. You're free to fail, to experiment, to adjust, all without the pressure of living up to a broadcasted version of your success. You're not chasing recognition, you're chasing results. And those results, when they come, speak with authority. They don't need a press release, a post, or a promise. They are the evidence. So stop announcing every intention like it's a trophy and start treating your goals like sacred contracts between you and the grind. Let the ego stay hungry. Let the spotlight stay off. Let the world wonder what you're doing while you quietly put in the work that turns silence into success. Because at the end of the day, the scoreboard doesn't remember who talked the loudest. It remembers who showed up, who stayed focused, and who finished what they started. People remember what you say, and if you're not careful, they'll use it against you. Not always with malice, but often out of habit, projection, or misplaced superiority. The moment you overshare your dreams, timelines, or next big moves, you create a contract in the minds of others. A silent expectation that they begin measuring you against, even if they never tell you. Now, every step you take is being tracked. Every delay is noticed. Every pivot is questioned. You've handed them a ruler and told them to measure your progress. And when the inevitable challenges come, when life takes longer than planned or the path bends in unexpected ways, those same people will remember your words, not with compassion, but with critique. Weren't you supposed to do this by now? I thought you said you were launching already. What happened to that big plan you told everyone about? They'll mock the timeline, doubt the vision, and use your earlier enthusiasm as a benchmark to question your current position. Not because they care about your progress, but because people love to keep score. Especially when it's not their game. The more you talk, the more evidence you give others to dissect, compare, and throw back in your face when things don't unfold perfectly. Your own words become the weapon. Your oversharing becomes the open door for criticism, sarcasm, or silent judgment. And while you're working through the natural grind of building something real, you're now also battling the noise of expectations you accidentally created. That's why discretion is power. Keep your moves quiet. Let your progress reveal itself when it's strong enough to stand without defense. Talk less, so you owe less. Protect your process from the eyes that only look to keep count. Because when you speak too soon and too often, you don't just share your goals, you share your vulnerabilities. And not everyone deserves access to that sacred space. Let your actions be your announcement, and your success be your explanation. Private work leads to public power, and the people who make the deepest impact are often the ones who say the least while doing the most. They aren't chasing attention, they're cultivating mastery. While others are broadcasting every move, craving validation for effort alone, these quiet operators are building in silence, far from the noise and distraction of the spotlight, because they understand a truth that many overlook. Real power doesn't need to announce itself. It reveals itself through results. It speaks through presence, precision, and performance, not through noise. When you commit to the grind in private, you give yourself the space to fail without judgment, to refine your craft without interference, and to move without needing permission or applause. You aren't working to be seen, you're working to be undeniable. And when that private discipline compounds, when your early mornings, late nights, sacrifices, and unseen hours finally mature into results, the world will have no choice but to pay attention. Not because you told them to, but because the echo of your achievement speaks volumes. This is the kind of power that can't be faked or rushed. It's not gifted, it's earned. In silence, in solitude, in the sacred space between who you are and who you're becoming. While others are wasting time selling an image, you're developing substance. While they speak loudly of what they plan to do, you're executing with quiet confidence. And when the time comes, your arrival will speak louder than their noise ever could. So stay low, stay focused, work privately, and let the universe amplify your results. You don't need to prove yourself every step of the way. Let them wonder, let them speculate, let your silence build curiosity, and your results deliver the message. Because in a world full of talkers, the one who moves in silence and wins is the one they remember. Private work isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's the soil in which greatness grows. And when that greatness blooms, no one can ignore it. Control the narrative by saying less, because in a world that's obsessed with constant updates and oversharing, power belongs to those who master the art of restraint. When you speak too often, you surrender control, not just over what's known, but over how you're perceived. People begin to form narratives about you based on fragments, assumptions, and emotions that have nothing to do with your truth. But when you say less, you leave no room for misinterpretation. Because there's simply not enough data for others to twist, dissect, or judge. Silence is not avoidance. It's a form of authorship. It's how you maintain sovereignty over your story. You decide what gets shared, when, and with whom. You don't allow the outside world to fill in the blanks with noise or bias because you've given them no blanks to fill. That's not secrecy, it's strategy. It's the quiet precision of someone who values focus over fame, progress over performance, and control over chaos. Every time you open your mouth, you risk giving away not just information but leverage. When people know your next move, they begin to anticipate it, question it, or worse, interfere with it. But when you move in silence, you hold all the cards. You don't need to explain, justify, or defend your choices because no one knows enough to challenge them. This creates a calm center of gravity around you, an aura of strength that comes not from arrogance but from discipline. It makes people pay closer attention, lean in, and watch carefully, because mystery creates magnetism. And when you finally do speak, whether through words, actions, or results, your message lands with weight, clarity, and intent. In a noisy world, the person who controls their words controls the room. So don't fall into the trap of thinking you owe anyone a running commentary on your life, your process, or your path. Say less, mean more. Use silence as your shield, your compass, and your amplifier. Because the less they know, the less they can distort, and the more power you keep where it belongs. In your hands. The mind works better without an audience, because creativity is an intimate, delicate process that thrives in solitude, away from the noise and expectations of others. When you create with eyes watching, you're not just crafting your idea, you're performing for a crowd, and that pressure changes everything. The audience, even if well-meaning, introduces distractions, doubts, and second-guessing that cloud your focus and fragment your energy. You start tailoring your work to please others rather than to fulfill your own vision. Instead of freely exploring possibilities, you begin to censor yourself, seeking approval over authenticity. But when you protect your headspace and create in private, you give your mind the freedom to wander, experiment, and make mistakes without fear of judgment or interruption. It's in that quiet, uninterrupted space that innovation is born and breakthroughs happen. Without the burden of external expectations, your mind can flow unhindered, discovering ideas you never would have found under the spotlight. This private sanctuary is where your true voice emerges, your unique perspective takes shape, and your most powerful work is formed. The applause can wait, because performing best is about the process, not the praise. When you're not distracted by the noise of others, you access a deeper level of concentration and clarity that fuels not only creativity, but also productivity. You learn to trust your instincts and push boundaries without fear. The solitude allows you to wrestle with challenges, to rethink strategies, and to refine your craft with patience and precision. Remember, the world will eventually hear your work, but that doesn't mean the world needs to witness your entire creative journey. Guard your mental space fiercely, nurture your ideas quietly, and build your masterpiece away from the crowd. When you finally step into the light with your creation, it will be sharper, stronger, and more authentic than anything made for an audience distracted by noise. Your mind works better without an audience, and when it's ready, your work will speak louder than any applause ever could. When you stop explaining, you start evolving, because the need to justify yourself or your journey is often a trap that keeps you stuck in place rather than moving forward.